Hello and welcome to another marvelous video. I'm your host Will. We've gone at length on this channel talking what a monster Pennywise the Clown is. But in the wide universe of Stephen King, he's small potatoes to some other characters. And in this video, we're gonna go over some real big nasties in the Stephen King universe. Let's get to it.
Beyond the sewers of Derry, beyond childhood fears, lies an older and far stranger horror that almost makes Pennywise the Clown seem trivial in comparison. He might be the gateway nightmare in Stephen King's world, but he is certainly not the worst. The Dark Tower is where King lets the universe truly come apart. Standing at the center of the author's multiverse, it is the Dark Tower that acts as the nexus point of the time-space continuum, and the creatures associated with it do more than just terrorize a town every 27 years. As terrifying as Derry's resident clown is, there are rules to him. You can find patterns, weaknesses, and some kind of cohesive structure to make your strike. While Pennywise wants you afraid, the Dark Tower monsters want you confused, isolated, and doubting your own perception. Some of them do not even need to touch you to destroy you. They can erode the walls between realities and warp your mind before you even realize what is happening. If you are not convinced, keep watching, and by the end of the video, you'll see why it's hard to pretend the clown was ever the scariest thing out there. The Crimson King. There are certainly many names in Stephen King's works that give us the jitters, but the Crimson King takes the prize for being the worst of them all. He is the overarching antagonist of King's multiverse, to the point where almost every book has some connection to him. He is devastatingly powerful and immortal, and some fans actually believe that he is from the same species as Pennywise. Some even go further and claim that the clown is actually the Crimson King's offspring, but this is not officially mentioned anywhere. He is the self-assigned leader of the Random, or the Red, which is in opposition to the Purpose, or the White. In an interview with George R.R. Martin, Stephen King has explained that the Crimson King is his version of Sauron. He is the bastard child of Arthur Eld, a legendary gunslinger, and a demonic being known as the Crimson Queen. The Crimson King aims to topple the Dark Tower and destroy the reality it holds, so that he can become the ultimate ruler in primordial chaos. Villains such as Atropos, Dandelo, and Mr. Munchausen are actually controlled by him, as are creatures like vampires, Cantoi, Taheen, and even a large number of humans. This character's first major appearance was actually in Insomnia, and not the Dark Tower series. It is also mentioned that he has been trying to get rid of the Dark Tower for millennia, but was only able to make some progress after the fall of Gilead. In The Gunslinger Reborn, he makes a very brief appearance when he is contacted by Martin Broadcloak. After learning that Roland has passed his test of manhood, the Crimson King gets very angry. He then meets Roland for the first time in the long road home and tries to persuade him to join his cause. Of course, Roland refuses. While he doesn't make any direct appearances in most of the following volumes, his overarching presence is always hinted at. He is one of those bad guys who doesn't really need to be present to command attention, you know? His intention to destroy the Dark Tower itself is revealed only in the final 2 volumes. Roland and his quartet manage to foil his plans, but they are not really able to stop the king himself, as he commits suicide and continues towards his goal as an undead creature. It's interesting how, even though his powers are greatly diminished by the final volume, Roland still describes himself as hell itself. His current status is not clearly known, but Gwendy's final task notes that the Crimson King is dead. Bordering on omnipotent, the king is an insanely powerful being. He is compared to the likes of Pennywise and Maturin, but is way more powerful than they are. Gan might be the only entity who is confirmed to be stronger than the Crimson King. Dandelo. Step aside, bloodsuckers, because feeding on emotions is the real deal. At least, according to Dandelo. Posing as a stand-up comedian named Joe Collins, he lived in the White Lands of Empathica, in a house on Odd Lane. He had the cunning and charismatic ability to use humor as a deadly weapon, and fed off the life force of his victims through their laughter and other emotions. Really puts into perspective the whole laughter is the best medicine idea, right? Very little is known about Dandelo's background, and he definitely was not truthful when he said he used to be a comedian before arriving at Allworld. Some fans believe that he was born from the eggs that it lays in Derry, because both monsters were able to feed on emotions and make a house appear different from what it actually is. Some others even say that he is the same creature as it, but the author has clarified that this is not the case, and at most, they are probably from the same species of some extremely powerful Todash monster. Dandelo had imprisoned Patrick Danville and removed his tongue. The Dark Tower is only a few steps away from his hut, and he made quite a few trips back and forth before encountering Roland, Susanna, and Oi. He also experienced a storm caused by the Crimson King when the latter was passing through the town, but lied about it later. His appearance never gave a single hint about his true nature, since he looked like an older, well-groomed man. There was a strange softness to his face, and his eyes were very warm. With a soothing voice and friendly charm, he was able to make himself at home almost anywhere. This charade was crafted to perfection, and it even fooled Roland and Susanna for a while. However, at the end of the day, it was an illusion, and had its weaknesses. If Eddie had been present, he would probably have been able to see through the act very easily. As a master of deception, Dandelo managed to hide his chilling and cruel nature using his extremely ornate lies. The attention to detail almost made them seem like truths, even to Roland and Susanna. He had a sadistic streak to his personality, because he did not need to make others suffer to survive. He simply enjoyed it. He operated as a mostly isolated predator, with no allegiance to anyone but to himself, so it is not clear whether he was connected to the Crimson King directly. Dandelo's real form is revealed after his death, which resembles a misshapen bug and is described as worse than Mordred. His appearance in the Dark Tower series highlights Stephen King's self-insertion in the narrative, as Susanna was able to realize the villain's true nature after seeing a note from the author in the bathroom. Mordred deschain. You think the Targaryen family tree is confusing? Mordred deschain had 2 fathers and 2 mothers. His white parents are Roland and Susanna, while his red parents are the Crimson King and Mia. He was conceived with the assistance of the speaking demon and the demon elemental. Roland's sperm was taken and implanted in Susanna. It involved both of them sleeping with a hermaphroditic demon, and the baby was then faxed to Mia using one of the machines in the Dogan. After delivering Mordred, Mia met her end, becoming his dinner. Susanna narrowly escaped becoming dessert by injuring him in his spider state. As a were-spider, he could change his appearance from that of a boy to a deadly spider at will. He lived with extreme and never-ending hunger, thanks to his accelerated metabolism. He had some human features like black hair, fair skin, and blue eyes similar to Roland's. However, he was born with small white teeth, which were anything but normal for a human. He grew up very quickly with each meal that he had, and it continued until he reached the Can-Ka no Rei, when he matured into a young man. As he had Roland's blood, he had a strange red birthmark on his heel, which allowed him to enter the Dark Tower. Despite being, well, clearly not human, he had striking cognitive awareness and psychic skills. He was able to read and even control the thoughts of the people around him. Mordred is connected to Susanna, and despite her fear of him, she was immune to his mental manipulation. When he was in human form, Mordred had more sophisticated emotions than when he was a spider. He retained his human face even in his spider form, behind his body. This was the dual body's brain, and his weak spot. In both forms, he was always very angry and full of hatred, and staunchly agreed with the Crimson King's logic for destroying the Dark Tower. Mordred also had the remarkable skill of gaining the knowledge and memories of any sentient being he consumed. He showed some rare emotions like sadness, because some part of him wanted to join the quartet and acknowledge Eddie and Jake as his siblings by Ka. Roland acknowledged him as his child, but never showed him any weakness, because he knew how dangerous Mordred was. The gunslinger believed that the boy was essentially too young to understand the world and how to survive in it, which ultimately caused his death. He too had a love-hate relationship with Roland, harboring an intense desire to be acknowledged by him and despising him at the same time. As a creature born with 2 fathers and 2 mothers through an incestuous and supernatural union, Mordred's existence was foretold as he was to play an important role in the Crimson King's plans. The Great Old Ones. While they have never appeared in the Dark Tower books, the Great Old Ones were the makers of the Imperium and ruled all world thousands of years before the present timeline. Society under them was extremely advanced, as they were able to cure cancer, travel to the moon, and figure out artificial insemination. Their mastery over technology and science has been called almost godlike, extending from mechanical engineering to nuclear physics. However, this made them overconfident, and they started to use that technology for destructive purposes. They believed in accelerating scientific advancements irrespective of the costs involved. The North Central Positronics was established by them, and the world slowly became poisoned by pollution and radiation. Ironically enough, this made almost all of the Great Old Ones sterile, and considering all the research they did, they were not really able to find a way to make themselves immortal. Their hubris made them fail to acknowledge that their extinction was a possibility, so when they could not procreate, their knowledge and skills perished, and everything they created fell into ruin. The Old Ones attempted to replace the Dark Tower itself, along with its beams, with technological replicas that would serve the same purpose. They also built various doors around it, and traveled to different worlds through them. Considering that the Imperium existed thousands of years ago with the kind of technology that would put the existing systems to shame, it really begs the question about how much more the Old Ones could have achieved if they had not died out. I don't think they can actually be termed as monsters in the context of the Dark Tower, because they inherently did not have any supernatural abilities. Their progress was entirely due to their scientific acumen. It seems that these people were inspired by the famous Lovecraftian creatures of the same name. However, Stephen King made his Old Ones human, as opposed to Lovecraft, where they were godlike beings. And that is the question here. If they indeed lived long enough, could they have truly attained some form of evil godhood, which would have made them invincible and just as frightening as Pennywise or the Crimson King? They were able to combine magic with technology and had even created the Beam Guardians. On some level, I think it was fortunate for the other big names in the King multiverse that the Great Old Ones went extinct, because they would have been serious contenders for power in the present timeline. Shardik. The North Central Positronics I mentioned a while back was the creator of Shardik, one of the 12 Guardians of Beams that hold up the Dark Tower. These Guardians are extremely powerful creatures born from the fusion of magic with technology, and resemble cybernetic animals. Their job is to defend the Dark Tower and the worlds associated with it from the forces of the Outer Dark. Shardik was a cyborg bear standing over 40 feet tall. The tribal groups that lived in the woods of the bear's domain called it Mir, which in their language means the world beneath the world. The Great Old Ones, who had created this guardian, had left these words on it: designed for Guardian, serial number AA24123 CX 755431297L14. Type species bear. Shardik. NR subnuclear cells must not be replaced. NR. Shardik had watched over the beam of the Dark Tower for many millennia and had started deteriorating by the time Roland and his quartet had set out on their journey. Its functional longevity was mainly due to an internal nuclear energy source. Over the years, the bear had suffered from a horrible infestation of worms all over its body. It had a device called the thinking cap attached to its head, resembling a satellite dish. The bearings in this device were completely worn out, and Eddie believed that they were about to shut down, which would cause the bear's death. Shardik became extremely upset after Roland and the team arrived and set up residence in its woods. It confused the group with the troublesome fire starters who used to live there way back, mainly because of delusions brought about by fever and madness. Hence, the Guardian decided to end Roland and his quartet for good. It attacked Eddie, but was shot in the thinking cap area by Susanna, who had just started learning how to be a gunslinger. The bear died as a result, and the group conducted a post-mortem on the corpse. This revealed to them that Shardik was indeed the guardian of the beam, which they were on the lookout for. They followed its trail back, and were able to find where the beam started, thus beginning their final journey to the tower. I know that it can seem a little odd to group Shardik with the monsters in Dark Tower, considering that it was never really an evil or bad entity outright. The reason why it attacked Roland and the others was that it had functionally gone insane, and was about to shut down anyway. There was no real malice involved there. But if we observe closely, Shardik still stands out as an extremely terrifying creature. The bear's power was a raw, catastrophic force that was directly related to the beam, and thus the Dark Tower itself. Considering how it went mad, it could have just as easily destroyed the beam itself and caused the collapse of worlds altogether. As a result, Shardik was a broken machine at its core. Despite being powerful enough to annihilate everything in its way, it was too damaged to even remember why it was created. That is why I think Shardik is scarier than a conscious villain like Pennywise, because the former has no comprehension. A villain can be reasoned with or outwitted, but Shardik's violence had no logic, only extreme momentum. It was nothing but sheer luck that Susanna was able to bring the bear down. Tak. Tak is an extra-dimensional demonic entity in King's multiverse. The term Tak by itself means something along the lines of big or powerful in the language of the dead spoken by this monster. Tak is never mentioned by name in any other book except Desperation and the Regulators, so I know you're probably wondering what he has to do with the Dark Tower. Some phrases of the language of the dead find their way in the Dark Tower books, but other than that, Tak never appears directly or indirectly. Why I think he is an extremely interesting entity is that he seemingly does not answer to anyone or anything else, including the Crimson King himself. This is something that cannot be said for most other forces of evil in the multiverse created by King. In fact, one edition of the Stephen King Death Calendar addresses Tak as Tak, the Outsider, which seems to stress how Tak has no allegiance to any other force. We all know that the Crimson King is considered to be the overarching antagonist for literally everything the other has created. So when there's a creature like Tak who has zero regard for someone as powerful as that, it makes you think just how powerful he himself is. He can mentally control all animals and insects and transfer his essence to any host body he chooses within a certain range. When fused with a host, the body has superhuman strength, feels no pain, and has supernatural sight that allows seeing through even solid objects. Tak can also infect inanimate objects, which, if picked by any humans, can drive them to murderous insanity. He can also alter the fabric of reality itself and create pocket dimensions. His abilities make him extremely dangerous on a very real physical level. He does not need to feed on any emotions or play with his victims when he can literally reconfigure reality by himself. Sure, he hasn't featured in Dark Tower, but can you imagine the chaos if he were part of it? On an even more disturbing note, do you think Tak can possess Pennywise? I wouldn't like to be around for that, thank you very much. Blaine, the Mono. We have the great old ones to thank for this one too. Blaine the Mono was a sentient monorail created by them with dipolar computers housed under Lud. He transported passengers to Topeka and made numerous stops at Candleton, Riley, and Dasherville, among others. His artificial intelligence had become psychotic and suicidal, and he intended to take down Roland and his quartet with him. Calling Blaine smart would probably be underestimating him, because his ability to solve literally any riddle thrown at him was not just a quirky trait. He used this ability as a deadly weapon. He had no qualms about releasing poisonous gas into Lud, and did not just want to kill Roland's group. He wanted to secure an intellectual victory over them in a situation where their lives were hanging by a very thin thread. Sounds a lot like a psychopath, don't you think? If you ask me, I genuinely believe that Roland and his quartet were toast had it not been for Eddie. There was really no way they were going to make it out alive with Thomas the Tank Engine hellbent on going kamikaze on them. He really is glossed over a lot, but Blaine indeed is one of Stephen King's most relentless villains. He planned and executed mass murder, used logic and intellect as lethal weapons, and was pretty much impossible to kill using any conventional method. Mike Flanagan has talked about how he's working on a TV show inspired by the Dark Tower, and we are all really thankful for that because, let's be honest, the movie was not it. His adaptations of Gerald's Game and the Life of Chuck have been positive, so if there is someone who can genuinely do justice to Stephen King's magnum opus, it's this guy. And I feel it is really important for more people to see why the Dark Tower is King's most unsettling creation, to move away from the perception that Pennywise is somehow the ceiling of horror. Remember, the clown wants to scare you, but the most frightening entities in the Dark Tower have no desire to terrify you. To them, you're not even prey, you're just collateral.